Okay, so it's early December 2013, and this is Space Nerds in Space. So I'll first start off with the engineering screen. If you don't understand this screen, you're pretty much screwed. I've added coolant. You see these blue entries here, and I can distribute coolant around the ship, and if your stuff overheats, it damages itself. So right now I've added a bunch of coolant. I can add power to the shields, power to the phasers. Now, this is something that's a little bit, a little bit confusing. Some things use, so when you're setting the power settings on engineering, you're basically limiting the amount of power that a certain system can use. Some of the systems will use as much power as you get it. The little triangles here show your sort of input from engineering, and then the orange bars show how much power is actually being used by that system. So they don't always match. Most of the systems will use sort of as much power as you let them. Some of the systems, like for example Impulse, this is sort of your thrusters. They don't actually use power unless you go over to navigation and turn on the thrusters. If you don't turn on the thrusters, then they don't use any power. But I can still limit how much power. If I turn this all the way down to 0 like this, then you can go over to the navigation screen and you can try to, add some thrust and nothing happens, and that's because engineering has turned off all the power. So engineering is sort of a deprivation system. You can deprive things of power, or you can give power to things. Like right now, warp I'm setting to 0. So this is kind of a default system. The other thing you can do, you can if you put too much power and not enough coolant, and if you overpower things, which is why these bars are longer on the power than the cooler, then you'll see it starts flashing red, which means the temperature is too high, and now it starts damaging itself. You see the status is going down because it's overheating. Now I can turn it off, and then the temperature starts going down, and then I can turn it back to a more reasonable level. As long as this thing isn't flashing red, then it's not damaging itself. But once it starts flashing red, then like the sensors are somewhat damaged now because I overpowered them for too long and the temperature got too high and started damaging itself. So that's engineering. You set the limits on what power different systems can use, and you distribute coolant around, and if you give too much power and not enough coolant, things overheat and damage themselves. So shields, generally you want to be pretty high, and as long as you keep the yellow bar kind of below the blue bar, it won't overheat. Right now I've got things set up where you can kind of move around and you got enough coolant to do everything you need to do. I may reduce the total amount of current coolant in the system so that you have to play with it a little bit more. All this is an effort to give engineering sort of something to do. Okay, so that's engineering, the latest changes. Let's see, what else? Navigation is kind of the same as it ever was. Now this is relatively new. This is the new weapons screen. Now you remember previously it was kind of a two-dimensional display. Now you actually have a turret. This is at the front of the ship. You have a little radar here. You have a power meter. It shows the small arrow shows what the engineering setting is, and how much power you give phasers from engineering controls how fast the system recharges. What's that? So the less power you give to phasers from engineering, the slower that needle, every time I fire, you see that needle kind of moving up. So the less power you give to phasers, the slower that needle will move. It will always eventually come up to 100. So if you're doing rapid fire, then you want, whenever you press the trigger, wherever the needle is, that's how much power is in the phasers. You can also fire torpedoes. You see, and you have a phaser wavelength that you can adjust according to whatever science says. You can also adjust it with the mouse, but of course, at the moment at least, you can't do that without also firing, which that's fine. So this is all sort of full 3D. You're on kind of on top of the ship, so you see your own ship. And I've changed the ship model, you may have noticed. So it used to be the ship model, let's see, is there a good view of it? So over here on science, there's a top view of the new ship model. And I did that because the old ship model had this big kind of wing thing on the back that interfered with the turret, because for a while there I had the thing so when you turn around backwards there's a gigantic tail thing in the back blocking your view and you couldn't shoot. So just from a purely practical standpoint, I kind of had to change the ship model. So let's see, what else have I done? One thing that I've done is I've changed the enemy AI. You'll notice that all these ships on this demon screen are blue now instead of cyan. That is, except you'll notice this guy right here is not blue, he's orange. Actually, if I go over to science, let's see, science. If I scan around, let's scan around with science so that we can see some stuff. That clicking sound, it shouldn't be clicking like that. All right, now you'll notice that things are not necessarily blue. So I've changed things so that the demon screen is showing the different factions that ships belong to in different colors, and the way that the ships, there's kind of a hostility matrix that describes how the different factions feel about each other in terms of getting into battles and such. So I'm still working on that. Let's see, what else can I show you? There is, there's also this idea of, let's see, I gotta find one here. There's this idea of instead of individual ships, there's, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I gotta get out of here. This idea of fleets, which there's a fleet right now of ships that are all mostly attacking, deciding that they want to attack me, unfortunately. Let's see, so let's move myself over here. Here's another fleet. And you can see how they're all kind of moving in concert, kind of a triangular shape. And if we look at that sort of through the main view screen, uh-oh, now they're going to probably, let's see. So there you see the fleet, they're all sort of attacking me. I'm trying to blow people up.
Fire detected.
That's interesting. That fleet seemed to have self-destructed or something. Doesn't seem to be behaving the way that I would expect. Well, I'm still working on this part. Let's just say, leave it at that. I've never seen that behave that way, though. See if I can find another fleet of ships. That looks like a fleet. Are they doing anything? I've never seen that behavior. This AI system is getting out of control. It's starting to do things I didn't anticipate. Okay, here's a fleet right here. Also behaving in a way I've never seen. Well, it's sort of, it looks like it's spinning, oddly enough. These are three-dimensional constructs, so I guess it could be spinning. Maybe if we can move ourselves down here and see what it looks like. Apparently not close enough. Showing up on the radar. Oh. Aren't those guys showing up on the radar? Maybe they're too far away. Oh, there they are. So there's the fleet flying through space. You can zoom in on them. You can see them. Yeah. So that's some interesting behavior. Let's see, is there anything else new I need to show you guys? I guess I could go through some of the controls. F1 is help. On the nav screen, the arrow keys move left, right, down, up. This is the throttle. You need to have engineering supply you with power before that to do anything. The zoom level, click on it, zooms. The new firing screen, use the mouse to aim your ship left, right, pans, up and down, moves up and down. Obviously, when you're pointed straight up and you move left and right, it just kind of spins around because it's a turret. The radar screen kind of tells you where things are. Of course, there's nothing on the radar screen at the moment. So you have weapons. I already explained engineering. This thing doesn't do anything.